First, I want to welcome you all, and for anybody who's new, the last time we were all together for a vision rally was in 2020, right before the pandemic. I know I said that word and I said I'd never say it again. But that's the last time we were able to all get together in a room like this and kind of share what's going on with the business in a broader spectrum and for everyone to hear kind of what's happening across the company. So super excited that we're finally back to doing these events, and we're going to be doing more of them. So it's time to get back together. It's time for us to spend time together. It's time for us to be around each other more and have all the opportunities we can, because we know that's what's going to make us better as a team. Welcome, and we're glad that you're here. And we know other exciting, our Florida team was able to come up, so excited. Our Carolina teams were able to come up. So as you know, we're geographically dispersed now, but we want to have those opportunities where we still bring everyone together, because we are one big team together. Even it doesn't matter what location you're sitting in. So we're going to get started with our fireside chat, where I'd like to invite Bob and Luke to join me on the stage. What's happening in the real estate cycles, and where are we? So we haven't had a chance to get in front of each other. I know there are people in this room that talk about this all day long in little sub meetings and different, we're investment meetings, as we're looking at deals. And so we really wanted to step back and get a view of where do we think we are today and where do we think we're going to be headed. What's behind you and on your screens in front of you, if you're further back in the room, is a chart that is from RCL. So they published this at the end of 2022. Just to give an indication of where they thought we were in the cycle at the end of 2022 and then where we were going to be by the end of 23. And for our main sectors, if you look at this, multifamily was showing that that they were late stable going into 2023 and thought we would be in the downturn at the end of this year. And for land, we were in the early downturn at the beginning of this year, and that we would be at the bottom at the end of 2023. So that's what's up on this chart when you look at there's land and multifamily, and then you see a whole bunch of other asset classes on here. Just kind of typical how people look at the real estate cycle that we're all familiar with and live and breathe by. So we really want to start, the question is with Bob and Luke. This is what RCLCO said. Let's look at the next slide. This is what Bob and Luke say. So I would like to tell everybody where you think we are in the real estate cycle.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thanks, Cindy. Yeah, go ahead.
I keep looking for Allison to look for where my corrections are going to come from.
I want somebody to be texting Allison right now so we can get real feedback from her.
Did you ever tie it up so she could say no?
She's in bad service, just like I am every
I
time
know.
I try to find. All right, so basically, I think we try to give our best shot at kind of where we think we are in the general real estate cycle as it relates to multifamily and land. We're a little less detailed, but I think there's also a really good story there. With multifamily, in particular with these cycles, like the rear view is always a lot clearer than kind of the crystal ball. But I think when we look back on kind of where we were in the beginning of 2022, there was still a lot of optimism in the market. Inflation was transient, and there was a lot of debate as to kind of what was really going on and what the future held. I think as 22 began to play out, that story became a little bit more clear. Inflation, was rampant, and the Fed, began taking action. They did their first interest rate increase in March of 22. There was only a 25 basis point increase. Really didn't do a whole lot to the investment market. It was more, like there's a dark cloud, here's a storm coming. But it really wasn't until Q3 when the yield curve inverted so that, short-term treasuries were being priced higher than long-term treasuries, indicating, an extreme rise in interest rates. That's really where everybody kind of started to take a step back, realizing this isn't a maybe, this is a certain, things are going to get a lot tougher. Projects are going to be a lot harder to finance. It's going to be a lot harder to get equity and other people excited to do new things. And that was really where, we took the signals like, we need to batten down the hatches and kind of make sure we have everything we're planning secure. Really, I think as we get into that was for me, the early signal for the downturn, all the big national money center banks shut down lending and altogether. A lot of it's because of, troubled office loans and other loans on their books that, there's an increased level of scrutiny with the regulators, and frankly, the banks are, worried after, the great financial crisis, and, everybody says they're well positioned, but the regulators are making sure of that right now. I think, up until right now, we've kind of been in that early downturn. Liquidity has been very low. There have been some deals that have still gotten done. Those are mostly deals that were pretty much teed up kind of going into this. That door seemingly has closed. Bank financing is really, really tight right now. And I think, if anybody has the option to wait to start a new multifamily job, they're taking it. There's very few transactions. The really big kind of market movers like Blackstone and Starwood, they're not doing anything right now. They're worried about their investors and managing their redemption queues. I think as we get further into this year and into kind of the third quarter of this year, it's going to be, at that point, there's going to be a year has gone by from when these groups who, realize the interest rates are going to continue to rise. The Fed is now taking rates to the federal funds rate to 5%, which is the highest they've indicated they're going to go, but they've threatened to go higher. So I think it's most likely they're going to stall here for quite some time, and the groups that are in trouble, overpaid for assets, over leveraged assets, et cetera, are going to have to start to cut bait and realize, either losses or, do whatever they can to come out clean. So we're going to see that begin to kind of enter the market, I think, in Q3. And as that becomes more prevalent, I think, that's going to signal distress to a lot of these investors who are still sitting on absolute tons of cash. And as these guys start to hear the story they've been waiting for, where, this guy, paid too much for this asset, and, we can buy it at a bargain relative to what it was priced at 2 years ago, I think there's going to be a lot more transactions, and there's going to be a lot more groups kind of coming off the sidelines. We're really hoping that once that story begins to play out, once investors realize, because our opinion is you can make money on deals the way they're priced today. It's just nobody wants to sell, and very few people want to buy just because they're kind of waiting for it to get worse. So we think that the worst is coming soon, and I think it's generally a good thing for the overall market because it's going to bring people off the sidelines. There's going to be kind of increased competition to buy assets, and as people are successful, prices are going to begin to kind of turn themselves around.
So Luke, these are Luke's dots up here, and they're significantly different on the multifamily side than on the RCLCO side. And I tend to agree with that, but with the one caveat that multifamily's pricing itself essentially in parallel with interest rate moves. So right now, that Luke mentioned the forward curve, that's the expectation of future interest rates. And right now, that curve moved up a point in just the last 2 or 3 weeks. There's been a lot of volatility in the last couple of weeks. So we're thinking we're going to start to see some transactional stuff, but it remains to be seen whether or not lenders are going to basically be more lenient with their loans and their borrowers, because there's a lot of money that's out there that's basically priced at market. So a lot of these people that bought floating rate assets with floating rate debt are getting absolutely crushed. They bought at 2.5% or 3% rates, and now they're up at 7%. I mean, we're seeing that with some of our construction loans. So it's right now, it looks like inflation's kind of sticky, which means that interest rates could be sticky. So this may be extended out a little longer on the multifamily side. We should mention the land side though. On the land side, it could be even sooner than what's there. Those two dots may be the same dot, on land right now, particularly land as we define land, which is principally home builder land. Home builders are doing surprisingly well. earlier this year, most of the analysts were saying that the home building industry was going to tank, because of the higher interest rates and unaffordability. The trouble is, nobody's moving out of their existing houses because people that bought existing housing stock bought it with 3% and 4% mortgages. They can't move. If they got a $1 million mortgage at 3%, they're paying $3,000 a year in interest, but to go out today, they'd be at 6.5%. It would be over 100% higher increase. So they're sticking where they are, which has forced all the housing activity to home builders. So home builder stocks in the last 30 days have been skyrocketing. The demand for the land deals that we're looking at is higher than I've ever seen. So I think we're maybe even beyond early recovery. I think we're in a very robust home builder land marketplace right now, which we're actively entering. And we just had a meeting an hour ago with the top people at NVR who want to do 15 or 20 deals with us. So there's tremendous demand for that kind of land. Then there are other types of land, but I think we'll get into that later.
Yeah, absolutely. Notice that we did not put an endpoint for the bottom.
Yes.
That is the fogginess.
Because we're developers.
We hope it's soon, but we'll see.
If Luke could put those dots on there, we would be like even ahead of the curve already, right? We'd be really good. But speaking to that is a little bit of, I think we pride ourselves on understanding these curves and what's happening in these cycles. Everything that Luke Bobby said is, how are we positioning ourselves? How did we position ourselves as we were coming into these cycles for 22 and 23? And how do you see us positioning ourselves as we move through that with our pipeline?
Yeah, I think right now, kind of the most actionable thing for us on the investment front is buying existing multifamily. We're able to do that based on today's interest rates, today's cap rates, and can kind of adjust real time with the market as the market has. I think as we look at development and other things, costs are still elevated. You're still hoping for things to get a little bit better in order for a job to start. But on the acquisition side, you're able to buy kind of basically below what it's costing to build some of these assets. And you're able to kind of produce a pretty good return in the near term. I think that's going to shift back. And development, particularly as we enter into kind of the bottom, will start to look a lot more attractive as costs and other things start to come in. There's still a lot of jobs. There's still jobs that are getting out of the gate. So like the subcontractors don't really have a clear message as to everything stopped. It's just some of the jobs have stopped. But when the lending is as bad as it's become, I think it's going to be very difficult for anybody to get anything going.
The other thing about our pipeline, you can divide it in a number of ways. We're very, very fortunate in that the 4 projects we have currently under really active development are nearing completion, and they'll be in lease up for the next 18 months, which pretty much corresponds to when rates are predicted to be coming in. So when we want to convert from our construction to our permanent financing, could be a very good time. That also is going to correspond when there's going to start being a lack of new supply in the marketplace, because with this slowdown that's in the marketplace right now, it happened in 2011 too. After the Great Recession, people just stopped building multifamily, and that left a hole in the marketplace for deliveries that occurred around 2011. That's going to be happening potentially in 2025, 26, and that's when we're going to be entering the permanent market for these. So that's good. The other thing is we own 7,000 units of development in St. Pete, Tampa, and up in Charlotte. And we control, or not control, wrong word, but we're circling and have a pretty good position on a couple thousand more of it in this marketplace between the Mile and Long Loudon. And so in most cases, we have either really great basis in those lots, we bought them at the right price 3 or 4 years ago, and or we have really strong financial partners. So we can sit comfortably with those and wait for the right time to start. And so if we can manage our deliveries going forward on the development side.
And we know we don't do this by ourselves. There's other players at the table. You both have already talked about interest rates, so we also have to deal with the debt side, the equity side. So What are you seeing as, what are the challenges as you're trying to get, people together for the new pursuits that we're doing, not so much the ones we already have tied up as we go forward? I'm not sure if we've got a visual for that. If not,
We're hoping Josiah has our slide.
do you have my slides? Did you get?
Oh, not that one.
No.
Okay.
I'm gonna stand up, do it. You ever see the Geico commercial where they're at the table and the check comes? I'm doing it for you, I'm gonna puppet master. You're gonna have a slide for that, but you know what that is, right? Alligator arms.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that one of our partners said to me in regards to a deal when everybody was kind of pulling back from the table. Nobody wanted to do what they had kind of initially signed up to do. And he's like, feels like everybody in this market's got alligator arms. And that's exactly like what we're seeing right now. Everybody wants to be active. The banks will tell you they're lending, but they're giving you terms that are just short enough to make sure like it's not attractive.
Yeah.
The equity partners, they'll tell you one day they need a certain return, and the next time, and when you bring them a deal with that return, it's gone up. And it's just, there's a lot of people who want to be active. They're kind of waiting for a green light, but they're not there yet. Whether it's directives from above, whether there's other issues they're dealing with internally, it's just there are a lot of groups that are out there that are just, they like talking about it, they want to be back, but it's not like it was a couple of years ago.
And we're playing in spaces where there are some opportunities. I don't know if everybody's familiar with the term covered land play, but because office is a really interesting asset class right now because it is so incredibly distressed, more distressed than probably any asset class any of us have seen in our lifetimes. It's the combination of overbuilding, a lot of B and C supply, getting mature, and the pandemic creating new workflow habits, and technology making it not necessary to be in the office all the time. Those things have created incredible opportunities where there are office parks all over America where the land is worth more than the buildings on them. As a matter of fact, the buildings take away from the bank because you got to tear them down. So but they currently have tenants and leases to burn off. So we actually are involved in 2 opportunities right now where we're buying or managing the acquisitions and zonings and rezonings of office parks. And a lot of people that want to be in the land space but don't have our skills in entitlement are looking to us to help them with it. So.
That sounds like a real competitive advantage for us that's out there. So I think anytime you're looking out and we see lemons, we want to make lemonade. Anything else that you think puts us in a really good competitive advantage as we're, again, moving through the cycle and we're coming out to the next, the upturn?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is that we're in a sound place financially. We don't have a number of problems from buying overinflated assets. Our land positions are all, fully capitalized with the intention to hold if necessary. And there's just not a lot of nagging problems that are keeping us from kind of looking out and trying to find opportunities.
Yeah, and we've been fortunate to convert our business model from one where we've been dependent on institutional investors, insurance companies and the like, and we're much more involved now with family offices or funds that really don't have the need to recycle their money as frequently. So, we're dealing with the Cecil family in Asheville, North Carolina. That's the descendants of the Vanderbilts. They own a tremendous amount of real estate there. We're now partnering with them and another family office that also has been around for over 100 years, the Big Spapo family, the Richardsons. We're already in a deal with them in Wilmington. So, we're partnering with people like that. Daryl Shaw in Tampa is a wealthy investor, made a lot of money in the pet hospital business, veterinary hospitalization business. And so we're in the Marquez family, which is a family office out of California, and on and on and on. We've got a number of these relationships that are going to give us the opportunity to own our assets a lot longer and generate a lot more wealth without having to recycle our assets over and over again. It's great for all 3 legs of our company. The management company gets to hold assets longer. Our development wing gets development. And then our land business also guess to support us with the generation of capital. So those are all things that are very important and all very robust right now, even though we're in a down cycle.
Another great thing we did to kind of prepare for this was kind of solidify our banking relationships. So Pat and his group moved a lot of our money to a lot of the treasury to strategic relationships. So we've been working with Capital One almost exclusively with a couple outliers for years, and we set the process in motion to move a lot of it to CIBC. We have a big depository relationship with Valley Bank, and frankly, that's what got us through kind of the fourth quarter push on a lot of the land positions that we needed to close. We didn't have those relationships, and we didn't have that type of relationship on the deposit side. We wouldn't have that type of access to debt. So that was really big for us. And luckily we did enough so that there's a lot more available, and we'll tap into that as we see opportunities that are fit.
I think it's great, and just being ahead of that curve on all those aspects and all the disciplines that we have in this company, financial discipline, our investment discipline, great partners that we have, how we keep working with those partners and building those relationships. And equally is, we've also pivoted and we move our operations. We're so nimble and flexible to make sure that how we're gonna operate together to make this all happen, because it happens with all of us in the room together. So we've also kept positioning ourselves to be ready for what is that next cycle that's gonna come, but what is the work that's gonna come, where are we gonna be doing this work? So I think it's important to know we do pivot and we become very flexible and nimble organization and always have ourselves prepared and ready for what's coming up next. And so we do a lot of work around that, along with aligning to that investment and capital strategy. And so with that, we've been growing into new markets, and that's been exciting. And so let's talk a little bit about how do you see growth going forward in the markets we exist, or if you have any other twinkles in your eye.
Yeah, so our footprint today, as we tell people externally, is DC into Central Florida. But we really have major hubs here in Northern Virginia, in the Carolinas, and then in Central Florida. There are big opportunities in places like Atlanta, Nashville, and where we've been successful in the past and how we entered the markets that we have our big hubs today has been in acquisition markets. So that's really a big focus of ours, is learning these markets while there's a good opportunity to buy existing. And then as we kind of learn the sub-markets on the process and kind of mature in those markets, the intention is always to bring our development expertise, whether that be multifamily or land. In terms of twinkles in my eye, though, we have had some discussion. I think it's early because we're still kind of filling out where we already are and kind of filling in some of the holes in kind of the footprint that we want to have. But there's been some discussion on going to Texas, really Dallas in specific. Texas is like 4 states, so that's been our focus. We view Dallas as kind of the new Chicago, where it's business friendly. It is kind of located right smack in the middle of the country. It has an emerging not even emerging, it's well emerged financial services hub. So there's a lot of big business that happens nationally in Dallas, and I just think it also has 4 or 5 regionals that are smaller cities, but truly cities kind of in its MSA. So it's a big place and somewhere that we think in the future could be right for our expansion.
Our existing marketplaces too, we have, one of the reasons we started looking at other markets was just because we didn't want to be subject to the ups and downs of a single marketplace, which can be severe and can be different than other places. But there was clearly more growth in the South. So, it's double what it is here. So, it's a clear opportunity to move. But we have so much room for expansion in the Carolinas. We've only just started there. Now that we're doing home builder land, and we're going to get into it in a minute, data center land, and corresponding with that is also some industrial land. We have a lot we can build out in that marketplace and in Central Florida. And so, I really look forward to growing those marketplaces. So each one of them is essentially the same as what we've developed here.
great opportunities
Right.
in the markets we have already. And again, showing our discipline and that we've got a strategy and a vision of what we're trying to do. And you mentioned data center, and so I called it the new frontier. And we have Mr. Data Center in the room, Kyle. After this, if you want to know anything about data centers, please go and see Kyle, because I think he's our in-house guru expert on that.
Or
But-
back into nuclear plants.
Or,
I mean, there you go.
If you want to do some new asset classes, go talk to Kyle. But, you know, we're in the real estate business, we're in the land business. We want to look where there's opportunity, obviously. And so, had to bring this up because some of you may have heard that we were doing some work in data centers, and some of you may not. But maybe you have the question about why, and that was my question for these guys. Why and why now? Why are we looking at data centers? So, thought it'd be great to get everybody up to speed, because that may just feel unfamiliar that we're not building houses on it, you know, and why are we looking at that?
So, I guess you guys have been around, most of you are around long enough to know that at the end of the Great Recession, we had like 20 plus or minus pieces of property that we owned, and we've been either rezoning them, repurposing them, or selling them over that period of time. It's generated an enormous amount of capital, well over $125 million for us. So that's been sort of plasma for our operation here. One of our sites out in Leesburg, we have under contract to a data center developer. We've been trying to get a rezone to residential for 15 years, and Leesburg doesn't want residential there. So we were basically, you know, could put like industrial uses on it, which would be worth $500,000 an acre. Data centers are willing to pay $6 million to $7 million an acre. So, and we have it under contract for that range. Actually, it might even be a little more. And so the amount of demand for this asset class, and particularly in proximity to Northern Virginia, where there's an enormous concentration of, I think 80% of all internet traffic goes through data centers in Loudoun County and Prince William County now. So these are great opportunities. So we said, wow, that's pretty good. We didn't have to do a lot of work for that either. So we have other sites that we now control, I think 5 in total that we're either control or have letters of intent on, and that we think that we can get up to speed and be a really good developer of these sites, primarily because we have the expertise in acquiring land in this marketplace, and also because we have development expertise. So we can source these projects for the data centers that are, or operators that are really hungry for these. There's a McKinsey study out that basically said that the demand for data centers will double between now and 2030. There's no other asset. I've never heard of the demand for something being twice in the real estate product of what it is in a 6.5-year period. So the demand is off the chart, and it's growing based on the amount of storage and AI that's coming out, and all the other forms of self-driving cars are all going to demand that much more data storage.
It's really just a natural extension of the land business. I mean, when you think about it, it's something highly in demand, and in the land business, in a good market, lots are highly in demand. In a bad market, they're not in demand at all. But in the data center business, just given this kind of growth and kind of it's exponential today, and there's not a foreseeable kind of stop. And the biggest concern we always had was like, all right, what if some technology comes out and everything they do in that data center, can be condensed to like a little chip, and suddenly they're obsolete. It's like, that's fine. Those data centers are, making that chip be able to work. They're cooling it, they're using that to transmit it, the data that's located. It's not like, there are servers there, but it's not just a bunch of hard drives. It's like the whole distribution network of information that really powers those. And with I don't remember talking about AI in any real capacity, a couple of years ago. Now it's what everybody's talking about. I mean, who knows what we're going to be talking about in 3 or 4 years. So it seems like something that's could provide some real stability, but also something we're just so well equipped to do. Like the amount of investment in these, like as a percentage, the land is like 5 to 7% of the total investment. So, you know, that equates to they don't really care what it costs to acquire that land because there's so much more that goes into these things. That's a good equation for us.
Yeah, basically your device, the way the data center people put it, is your device, whether it's an iPad or your iPhone or even your laptop, is nothing more than a monitor for the computer, which is really housed in multiple data centers. And literally everything you're doing, if you're connected to the internet, is running through a data center. You know, in the 1970s and 80s, these new urbanist writers were saying the office is the factory of the future. Well, they're now saying the data center is the office of the future, which that's just another thing making offices that much more obsolete. And it's really the right place to be in a real estate business. The other advantage we have at Kettler is that we are private. And so we can be in the real estate business. We don't have to, so we can move where the market opportunities are and be opportunistic. Whereas if you're a home builder, you're gonna be a home builder today, you're gonna be a home builder tomorrow, and you're kind of stuck with the same with the retail players. Very, very few public companies get to sort of operate in multiple tiers. So we're trying to be opportunistic for everybody.
Opportunistic and a great capital source. That just comes right back into the platform, gives us more capital to work with on the other asset classes that, you know, that we love to develop, build, own, operate. So it ends up coming in at a very good time. And right now, because we haven't figured out what the future is going to go with that, you got to have the data centers. You know, you have multifamily housing, single family houses for places to live, but data centers.
We got to build 7,000 apartments.
Yeah, exactly. So, are there any other asset classes? I know in some meetings I've sat in, Luke, and we've talked retail. Is it something, I know it's embedded in some of what we do, but are you looking at that as something that we would go further into?
We certainly have and will continue to build mixed use. So, you know, retail as part of larger developments, either horizontally or vertically. You know, so that's always going to be part of kind of like our placemaking strategy. You know, Graham's building an office building down in Ybor. He might be the most successful office developer in this market right now because it's 50% leased. Well, we're working on finalizing it, but it's going really well so far. So, you know, as it relates to kind of creating the place and providing, you know, a diversity and things that kind of help everything else survive. So like that office building will help the retail, which will help the multifamily. So it's all kind of critical for the same ecosystem. I think we'll continue to do that. As it relates to acquiring kind of like other asset types, it's really an avenue to get into land. You know, we bought some retail and an office building in St. Pete, really to give us a way to carry the land, and you know, we actually came up with a pretty creative way to develop it. So I think looking at those office, you know, as Bob mentioned, like, you know, you can buy office today at like a 12 cap rate, and like that's great, but like the cap rate's going to be 8 like next year and even lower the following. So if that's your business plan, like, and we want to knock it down and put a new use in place, it's a great time to invest in office. If you want to be an office owner for the long term, it's going to be tough.
In the meantime, we now own a dispensary.
You're down in
No one
Florida.
can right there. Yeah, and a magic show.
Retail.
Somehow or another, these guys that know the magic show.
We have some great retail. That's just why Graham is now permanently in Florida with his team, and they're like, we're not coming back up here. We got it.
These magicians make a helicopter disappear on stage, and we can't fly the goddamn helicopter. I don't know where they're storing it. Maybe it's a balloon. I don't know.
So as you're hearing this, you're seeing we're kind of, you know, right now, we've got some retail and some office and things that we're doing. And so we'll always have to open up our eyes to, always want to bring in the operations side of the world. So if you see things around the hallway, like, oh, should we manage this office? Should we manage this retail? We're always going to look at those opportunities too, but I don't want the whole property management side of the house to go, oh my God, we're going to manage office buildings tomorrow. We will always look at those, how we do this work, both in our house and outside, to do it in the best way that we can. But yeah, I mean, that's a fact of what we have on our, in our portfolio right now. We've got a mix of things that we're operating and that we're owning, but strategically and managing those through the pipeline based on where we are backing into the market. So I want to end this with, because you guys are so brilliant and can see forward, and Bob, I know you've been through a few of these cycles before. Maybe, I know I've been through a few of them, so 3 years out, where do you think we're going to be 3 years from now?
Well, I think we've talked about in every one of these previous answers, pretty much where we're positioning ourselves. So, we're going to be in a much broader spectrum of real estate products, and I know we're also, one of the things we haven't talked about is growing the management company. So that's Cindy's, one of her primary sort of focus points right now. So yeah, we're pursuing all these things, but I think we're going to be much more into what are our traditional businesses in these other submarkets. And I think by 3 years from now, we'll start saying, okay, we're established, my hopes are we're established in Florida, Carolinas, this marketplace, and we can start looking at other marketplaces. So, we're talking about Dallas, but Atlanta is actually quite adjacent to what we're doing. So that's a possibility too. And Central Florida can become more than just Central Florida. It can expand in that area too. So that's where I think we're going to be.
Luke, we're going to hold you to it. I lied on the card.
Oh, good.
And I'll still be here.
And you are still going to be
I'll still be
Everybody
here.
write that down, absolutely.
I think what we're gonna see is like, there's already a ton of money that has been chasing multifamily. There's large institutional investors, et cetera. But when you look back at the last couple of downturns, multifamily continues to kind of be very resilient. When you look at the pandemic, everybody was terrified. Nobody's gonna pay their rent. Some people didn't, but most people did. And, as you look at kind of the recovery, multifamily came out screaming because there was a lot of pent-up demand, and a lot more money in the system. I think moving forward, like large institutional investors, sovereign wealth funds, et cetera, are gonna allocate much more of their investments towards housing. And that's gonna continue to drive the market. It's gonna drive production, but it's also gonna drive the value of these assets, because it's a very safe place to place money. Everybody thought that was office up until, the last 2 years. And I think a lot of that allocation is coming into the housing space.
Great, thank you.
All right.
I want to give everybody, does anybody have any questions for Bob or Luke? Just so we can take a couple minutes.
Anything crazed for the single family rental piece?
Good question.
It's sort of in a pothole right now. It's we've never liked that space for a couple reasons. They're very expensive to maintain, and they came into existence because during the downturn, you could buy single family houses at distressed prices. So a lot of these aggregators of single family homes bought them. If you actually talk to these guys, they didn't make money operating them. They made money selling them back, okay? So that sort of spawned they're not, that part of the business went, how can we take advantage of, that there's demand for rental on these types of properties? So we started build for rent. And build for rent is just, we've never been able to make it work on paper, and you need super cheap land to make it work. And right now, home builders are willing to pay literally anything for a lot. So, yeah, you can build for rent, but you're gonna give up an enormous amount of land profit on that. And they're hard to maintain. I mean, we've never liked it.
We took a field trip to Jacksonville, which is like the epicenter of built for rent, and went and looked at a bunch of different products and found that in order to make kind of their numbers work, the product they were building was not resellable to like an individual consumer. That was like a big deviation in the space, and it's continued down that direction. They're cottages or smaller townhomes, and really nowhere anybody would just buy as a regular consumer. But we can work from a rental standpoint, I guess. What we've struggled with, and we found multiple times, is that if you compare a 3-bedroom flat to a build for rent 3-bedroom, the 3-bedroom flat in one of our apartments, it gets a higher rent. And I think a big part of that is just the convenience of having professionally managed staff, having great amenities, and like, you know, a lot of these built for rents are kind of off on their own with very little amenities, you know, off-site management, et cetera. And I think there's just a big difference there. So we view it as like, I think there's a good opportunity to like differentiate product by doing some larger like townhomes or things like that as part of it. Astor is an amazing example of how like a variation of unit type can be really successful. But I think for the most part, we're not going to be doing any standalone build for rent, but maybe some townhomes as part of like a garden.
That's a really good point. They can turbocharge a project, and a lot of you guys know when you hit about 400 to 450 units, you start leasing against yourself. You have so many people moving out that you got to release all of those and try to keep it full. So these bigger apartment projects that get up around 500 units have a tough time staying at 95%. But if you have a 60 or 70 unit townhouse component of it, you have no trouble keeping because you got all these different product types. So just like in any other housing job, the more variation, the higher velocity you can have.
Question for you, for the office space component, you know, we're 3 years into COVID now, and you know, those 5 to 10 year leases are going to start to end. How do you envision that impacting the multifamily space? Do you think, you know, investors are going to take a big swing at these and remodel or redevelop, or do you think it just because the cost alone, it's not an option?
I think a lot of office is going to be redeveloped. Torn down. I think, you know, at best, like what you're seeing, and it's different by region, but like there's a 50% or less chance of a tenant renewing right now in older than kind of 10-year space. So there's going to be a lot of vacant office space. I think that's going to open it up for redevelopment. What's ironic is like the new office space does well. It's the older space that is, you know, really struggling. And I think because there's going to be so much space available, the newer space will be a little bit more attainable, so people can move from the older space to the new space somewhat frictionlessly. So it's going to be kind of redeveloped, and you know, hope it doesn't all turn out to be multifamily, but you know, maybe it could be townhomes, maybe there's hotel. Retail is doing shockingly well, so it really just depends on kind of the location, but I think it's mostly going to be demolished. There's just seemingly a very much so oversupply right now.
They're the wrong shape. I mean, office buildings are square, multifamily buildings need to be skinny and long. And it just, you know, unless the building is so gigantic that you can cut an atrium or two into them, which is like what Douglas did down in the Head Company warehouse. That was a 1 million foot building that was sat on a whole city block, you know, but he cut 2 huge atriums in it, creating interior windows. So, but there are not that many 1 million foot 4-story buildings around.
Every time I've ever asked Tim to look at an office conversion, he's asked whether we could just knock it down.
But it's the easy way out. You know?
He says it's going to cost the same.
Well,
But he's always right. That's
right.
part of that.
thank you, Bob, Lou, for taking time to do this update with everyone. And with that, I'm actually going to invite Pam and Graham to come up to give us a nice overview.
I'm Pam Tyrrell. I oversee development and construction, so I know a lot of people in here, but not everybody. And I want to do 2 things before I give you an overview of what we have going on in development and construction. The first is I want to thank my team for coming from Florida and North Carolina. Some of them, it's their first time coming to the corporate office, and the first time meeting their teammates in person. So it's been great having everyone here. And I also, since everyone's together, the last 3 years have been really interesting to be doing construction, a lot of tangents and a lot of things that we had to do to be nimble. And I want to thank all the departments because we interact with all of you. And it has not been easy, and we appreciate all the cooperation, problem solving, and help that you guys have given us. So I just wanted to say that like we're all here because we could not do it without you. So anyway, so we'll start out with that, and then I want to I have about, well, let's see, 20 minutes left. So I'm gonna take about half our time to go over some of the projects that we have that are getting ready to open, and then also a few that are gonna be in our future pipeline. And then I'm gonna turn it over to Graham, who's gonna focus on our featured future project, Gasworks, which a lot of you have probably heard about. It's in Tampa. It's a really interesting project, so I wanted to give a decent amount of time for him to give everybody an overview of that. So, all right, Josiah. All right, here's a snapshot of where we are as of June 1st. Okay, we oversee land and multifamily development. We have 24 projects going on right now, and this does not include all the loop stuff, you know, all the new business, all that. These are actively in some stage of pre-development or construction. All in all, it's about, let's see, what is that, over $2 billion worth of projects. So we're very busy. 4,000 units, 104,000 square feet of future commercial space, and 56,000 square feet of retail. So it's a lot. So when we talk about data centers and single family, don't worry, property management, we got a lot of projects coming for you. So we're gonna be going through those, but this is literally as of a week ago. So that's where we are. Josiah, next one. All right, here are our upcoming deliveries. We have 7 projects that will be turned over to property management in the next 12 months. It is a huge undertaking. As you all know, we work with a lot of you on opening these buildings. So we have 2 that'll be this spring, hopefully this month, if Ron and Tim are successful. 2 this month, and then we have 2 in the fall, and then we have 2 next spring, and then 1 next summer. Those are actively in construction projects getting ready to open. So there's our snapshot. The first 2 are, one is in Florida and one is in North Carolina. So Delamar, everyone pretty much knows this project. We built it during the pandemic. We bought it from Disney. We opened the first phase, 379 units, and it leased up 40 units a month, something crazy that I had never seen. And so we went ahead and built the second building onto the property. It's 95 units. Something interesting, there's a current construction photo. It looks pretty finished on the outside. I'm just trying to get through inspection.
It looks good.
Yeah, it's almost there. You know, the plants make a big difference. Anyway, so Delamar is interesting because it's our first project where we did bulk Wi-Fi. So where we did community-wide internet. Disney controls everything in Celebration, so there weren't a lot of options. So we went ahead and did bulk Wi-Fi there as a test case, and now that's kind of what we're going to do on all our future projects. It's very accretive. We cut the cord on cable. Doesn't seem to be a problem. So that's the direction we're headed in the future. The other thing we did at this building, which maybe not everybody knows about, is we integrated some smart home technology with Yardi Home IQ so that residents have control of their door locks, thermostats, there's water sensors, door sensors that they can all control on their app on the phone. And it's all integrated with Yardi. And so it's great from a resident standpoint, but really for management, they're able to, from a single dashboard, see, you know, what the temperature is in vacant units. They can see if there's water leak in a unit. So it's a really great technology that we actually implemented at 111 as well. And we're trying to figure out if we could implement it other places, but due to the cost, it's a little hard right now. That's the problem. So that's Delamar. The next project that will be opening anytime soon, the first building, not the whole project, is Metropolitan at the Riverwalk in Wilmington. It's an amazing project. This, you can see, it's waterfront views. It's adjacent to the Live Oak Pavilion, which is right there on the top, which holds over 30 events, you know, every summer. And so you're really right there in downtown Wilmington on the waterfront and right next to that venue. We're hoping to get the first building on the north side. This is a pretty current construction photo, maybe like a few weeks old. We're opening the north building with the garage, hopefully in the next week to 10 days, if everything works out. And then the larger building on the water will open in the fall. These projects are so big, you have to deliver them in phases. And then the next picture, is courtesy, there's our building. This is the Dave Matthews concert a few weeks ago. And one of our former KETTLER colleagues
Future resident.
is a total Dave Matthews follower, and he was backstage.
Took out the
and took
backstage
picture.
pass.
Yeah.
Kevin Peterson.
Peter.
Wow.
Yeah, so he sent that to us, and we were like, no, I'm gonna use that for my presentation. That's amazing. So that's the Dave Matthews concert, and there's our building right there. So those balconies are really front row seats to these concerts. All right, next up, we have in the fall, okay, so that's, we gotta get those open. And then we're gonna start pre-leasing on our next two projects that will open in the fall. They're both in Charlotte. The first is Hawkins Press. This is a 426 unit building. It's branded on the site before, it's in an industrial area in South End. And on the site, there was a printing press company there, and it had been operational since like 30s. And so it was really interesting because we were able to go in there and look at all the equipment and look at all the things that were in there that we could try to salvage some things to put into the building. So all our branding and interior design is kind of focused around printing. So I guess Josiah, do you want to? Okay, here's a current picture. This is, again, a fall delivery. So next one, the rendering. Yeah, so inside in the warehouse where the printing press were, there were all these trays that held all the little letters, the metal letters for printing. And so we took a bunch of them and gave them to the interior designer, and she's putting them and refabricating them into this light fixture that's going to go in the lobby. So kind of like those little things, we're gonna work with the marketing team and the on-site team to make sure that all the different things that we've put into the building. We're doing a lot of artwork, printing artwork, and just trying to capture the essence of that area. So that's Hawkins Press. The next is South End Hollis, and I will say that this project, it's right down the street, down South End from Hawkins Press, but I will say in 2020, when we were looking at it, I was like, ooh, okay, it's a little different than Hawkins Press. That's a little more pulled together. But I will say the most amazing thing about this project is that the context around it has just really transformed in the last 3 years, and it is a great project. So we're really excited about this one to open. It's a little smaller, it's 310 units, it has retail on the ground floor. All around it is now new residential, retail, breweries, just amazing. It's right on the light rail. So this is a picture of it, as of a few weeks ago. And it's just a really exciting project. From a design standpoint, because it is right on South Boulevard, and it's kind of busy around there, and a lot of the projects in Charlotte, I toured a lot of them, they start to all look alike. I don't know, it's a busy area. So we decided to introduce the biophilic design in the building. So we're doing a lot of wood and a lot of stone and bringing in natural, real plants. And we're trying to make it a little bit of an oasis. It's a little bit of a smaller 300 unit project. But that's sort of it's a smaller project, smaller scale, and it's meant to be more of a quiet kind of a community. So that's an image of the courtyard, which is also very small because it's a small site, but we really tried to capture that calm, relaxed feel. So what do we have next? Let's see. All right, moving into, okay, so that was expanding into North Carolina. That's 3 projects that we'll have open by the end of this year. And then in the pandemic, we were very busy buying properties and designing properties. And then we found a great site in Cary, North Carolina, which is outside of Raleigh. And this site, Crescent Ridge, is actually a mixed-use project. We have 109 townhome lots that we're developing, and then 425 residential units in 3 buildings. There's our site. The apartments are up here, and over here are the lots. Dave and Aaron just successfully delivered the first batch of lots that we were required for Dreamfinders Homes, and all the lots for 109 will be delivered by the end of the summer. So that is going to be on its way, and then our project should deliver next spring. here's some pictures of it in progress. So that's in Raleigh. So that one, very busy. Let's see. All right, but then, oh no, where did Mather go? It's after one? Oh, okay. Oh, right, okay. Thanks. All right, so this is in Florida. This is the first phase of the Greater Gasworks project, which Graham is going to give an overview on. It's in a historical area near Ybor City, and we've selected the name. We worked with the marketing agency because there was a society, an Afro-Cuban society building called the Martia Maceo Social Club that was on the property, hence the name La Union. So we're going to be using some actual historic reference for the naming of the project as our first building to open in Tampa. Did you get the pictures? Okay, yeah. So there's the building that was on the site, a picture of, the social and the aid, they helped people, and it was a really good organization. And I just think it's a project that actually has real historic context, so we really want to leverage off that. All right. These are some pictures of our first phase, and then existing construction, and you can see the Tampa skyline in the back. So, but Graham's going to get into a lot of detail on this. All right, last but not least, back up in Northern Virginia. I don't know if any of you knew this, but we are working on a very upscale senior housing community. It's over by the Galleria, next to the Mile. It's high-rise. We were hired, so we're not the owners of this, but we were hired by the Mather companies. They're based out of Chicago to do construction management for them. So we have 4 team members that are dedicated to this project, and it's going pretty well. They are doing a really good job of managing all the unit customizations. I mean, there's 300 units. The entry price there is like $800,000 to $4 million. These people can go in and customize their unit, and it is a huge undertaking for our team. So it is really, when I walked through there, the scale of it is huge. It is like a upscale hotel. It has full amenities, restaurants, medical care, plazas. I mean, it's really incredible. So you guys can see it. It's right on the other side of Galleria, right next to Brentford. So, but that is, my team's doing a great job managing this thing. It's really big. So, all right. And then, so those are the 7 jobs we have that are going to deliver in the next, 12 months, we'll say. And I know, like Luke and Bob, it's a little bit of a volatile market right now for a new business, but that has not stopped us because we want to be in a position like with fully designed buildings ready to go when the market hits, and we're ready to get financing and partners. So we have 5 projects that are currently, I'd say, on the boards, that we're really working through early design and pre-development. The first is a high-rise in Charlotte, 1427 South Boulevard. The next is another one in Charlotte. This is close to the Southland Hollis project, 3119 South Street. We have Edge, which is where the Magic Show and the dispensary are currently. That's our interim income. So that's a high-rise in St. Pete. And then we have the second parcel next to La Union, which we call it very nicely the W2 parcel. We don't have a name for it yet, but we'll be working on that. And then last but not least, it's only a single picture, Gasworks, but it's actually a humongous project that that is our feature project for today. And I wanted to introduce Graham, Tyrrell. We're not related. It's Tyrrell.
We're just best friends.
We're just best buddies. We've worked together a long time. But anyway, I wanted him to provide an overview of the Greater Gasworks development. So, thank you.
One of the things that Luke and Bob kind of were alluding to was, we were very fortunate that we were able to sort of lock in a lot of great development land right before prices got out of control. This is probably Exhibit A because, as you can see, it's a very large site. It's 40 acres of land, And you can see the context here. You can see the Tampa skyline there in the background. There's another very dense neighborhood to our south called Channel District. So this is an area that's right in the core of Tampa, right in the city center. And where the bottom of the picture where we're standing, where I'm standing, is Ybor City. And Ybor City is a very historic place. And we'll talk about it here in a second. I'll show you some pictures of what it used to look like. But it's the center of the cigar industry in Tampa. And cigars were really the big industry in Tampa, back in the day. So it's really the historic place of Florida. And as many of you probably know, Florida doesn't have a lot of historic places. A lot of it's new and shiny. And so having this great context of a place where there's already an incredible historic reference next to our downtown area was an incredible opportunity for us. 40 acres of land, contiguous land as well. And so we got to know the gentleman who put all this together, Daryl Shore. And over the course of a couple of years, really in 2018, 2019, we were able to sort of put together a transaction with him and really lock this land in for an incredible pipeline of future development. Next slide. Historically then, this is what it looked like. And why Gasworks? Well, that's why Gasworks is that big circular object right there with the shadow. It used to be a big gas production plant that sat on a big chunk of the property. But as you look further to north, you can see it's a very tight street grid, very old urban street grid. So the area that the Gasworks, where our project is, it was mostly sort of an industrial flavor. But generally, right around us, it was very, very dense, very mixed use. It was where people lived, people worked, and played. Next slide. And so these are some of the cultural references and things that we've been thinking about as we started to put together, what should this place look like today, right? So once upon a time, the neighborhood of Ybor City looked like this. And the bottom picture in particular is interesting. It's a panoramic that's looking north from downtown Tampa across Ybor City. And you can see it's generally a very low-rise environment. You don't see too many big buildings, but if you look closely, you do see some larger buildings, and those were the cigar factories. So there was quite a number of large cigar factories. There was also a brewery building in there. But that was the type of neighborhood it was. And it was a very big immigrant neighborhood. And Pam referenced that a little bit earlier in the naming of the first project, the Union. Again, some more historic references here. The cigar factories, and these are two great examples. And the great news is the area has been preserved pretty well. It's actually on the National Historic Register. So it's one of the few places, again, in Florida, St. Augustine, Ybor City, a few other places, but not too many in Florida. But actually the land itself that we're developing is these slides on the bottom. You can see it was a very hardscrabble area. It was very sort of industrial and sort of overlooked, and it's always been that way, really, until today. There's been this gap between Ybor City and the downtown area. Next slide. So we have roosters. Ybor City is known for not only cigar factories, but for the influences of the original immigrants. So it's very much of a Cuban, Spanish, and Italian immigrant population that came to Ybor for the cigar factories. And they left with them a lot of great remnants. And there's this place called Columbia Restaurant here. You can see it's a really ornate Spanish restaurant, supposedly the largest Spanish restaurant in the world. It's a huge place. But yeah, the roosters still run the streets freely and are protected, and it just gives it a great sort of unique flavor, that you don't get in other places. Next. It's a very colorful place too. Again, a lot of this comes from the Cuban influence, but generally there's a lot of just artistic influences in Ybor. It's really drawn, it went through some hard times, and so it drew a lot of people who were looking for more affordable places to live, and that included a lot of artists. So you see a lot of murals around the place. And then that other picture there at the bottom, it's like the Cuba, that's actually a small park that's actually very close to our site. That's actually technically a piece of Cuban territory. It's actually a monument to Jose Marti, which was the hero of the Cuban Revolution. Next slide. So again, a bit more of a geographic reference here. Gasworks there in red. You can see it sits nicely between Ybor City, the Channel District immediately to our south. Water Street, something all of you may have heard of. Water Street in Tampa was another huge development, and it was actually undertaken by a lot of folks who came from the DC area. Some of the folks used to work at JPG went down probably about 5 years ago, and they worked with the owner of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and that's Emily Arena there, the white object just to the south of Water Street. He had a lot of land surrounding his arena, and he wanted to redevelop that. So that sort of was the genesis for that. That's now reaching its maturity. Those buildings have delivered, they're being very successful, highest rents in town. And I think you'd be fairly shocked how high those rents are, even relative to the DC market. So that's really spurred a lot of interest in the downtown area. The CBD itself is probably less desirable, but the Water Street, Chandler District area, very desirable. And then Gasworks just to the north of that. The pink line is actually showing the streetcar, and that's another really sort of amazing feature about the Gasworks site, is that you have the streetcar running right through the center of it. And so that's the streetcar there on the top right. On the bottom is something called the Bride Line, which is a intercity train service that currently runs between Miami and Orlando, and they're looking to extend that to Tampa. And where they sort of finally arrive in Tampa, generally where the Bride Line is there at the top of the page, that's where they want to sort of come in. So that's going to be another great feature for our project, because it'll mean, you know, you can very quickly get on a train and be up in Orlando in a very short space of time. Next slide. Okay, so this is actually our development site and program. It's 18 development sites. The two that are in white there, W1 and W2, those are the two that Pam showed you earlier. So W1 has actually got a name now, it's La Union. W2 is the second site that we're currently in construction drawings and permits for, so we hope to start that very soon. And between those two, there's about 700 apartments between those two buildings. The rest of the development adds up to over 5,000 apartments, 500,000 square feet of office, and about 150,000 square feet of retail space. This was a zoning effort that took us quite a while, but the good news is when we got through the zoning, we actually have a lot of flexibility, so we can adjust our program as the market dictates. So we can do more residential, we can do more office, probably not more office space than what they were saying earlier, but we have one office building, we'll show you that here in a second. But generally, it's a great zoning, it's great real estate. You know, it's a big undertaking because we have a huge amount of infrastructure we have to put in. You'll see running through here, there is a rail line just to the south of us is Union Station. So we have a rail line that kind of bisects the property. We have to put in new crossings, we have to build a park. So there's a lot of big infrastructure going in, but it's sort of like when you look at the bigger investment, it's really worthwhile. Next slide. As part of a project of this size, obviously a big component is kind of the placemaking and sort of, you know, we're essentially building a neighborhood here, and we're connecting existing neighborhoods as well. So we have to be very thoughtful about how we do that and how we sort of create places, not just for people to live, but also then where they can go play, eat, you know, go to work, and also making those physical connections as well with the streets. And one of the things that I showed you earlier is we have a very sort of small street grid. So we wanted to kind of replicate that and really kind of continue that through the development and create that very sort of tight-knit urban community, even though some of these will be very large buildings. But also complementing that with some very important recreational features. So we have trails, we have park space, we have a new streetcar stop, which is very important. And then number 3 is our Paseo, our pedestrian street, and I'll show you more of that in a second. Next slide. So this is a closer up view of what we're calling our next phase, and it's really the E1, 2, and 3 sites. Those are the next building sites, but with that, we are having to do quite a lot of placemaking, and that's intentional because we want to sort of, you know, early on, we want to make sure that people really believe in this as a place to live. So, as I mentioned, 3rd Avenue, directly between E2 and 3, that's going to be a pedestrian street for Paseo. That's going to have a lot of outdoor dining on it, a lot of, you know, really great sort of interaction between those two buildings. The new streetcar stop just to the west of E3. And then the park itself is actually city property, so we don't own that piece of property. That's actually today a roundabout that's part of the existing street pattern. We're going to take the roundabout out, and we're going to replace that with about a 3/4 acre park, which will be a city park, but we'll build that, and that will also be a great amenity for these 3 buildings. Next slide. The key on this first phase is that if you remember back to the first slide I showed you, there's very little actually on the site today. A lot of it's empty lots or very small older buildings. But there's one building on the site that's actually got a great value to it, and that's this warehouse. The 3 images below the outside image are shots of the inside of the warehouse. You can see it's a very large open space. It's got this great barrel vault ceiling. And so it's a natural candidate for conversion into sort of a marketplace retail, restaurants. And these are some of the sort of precedent images and some of the aspirational images we have here on the right, sorry, on the left. So our architectural team's working on this right now. They're trying to come up with a program and a design for this building. A portion of the building will be taken down to make way for the office. So the idea is that you'll have office, daytime population right next to this great retail space, restaurants, all day long activity, if you can imagine, very similar to places like Union Market in DC. And then surrounding that residential. So it's going to be a real good work environment. And so now we have some renderings just kind of showing you, today what our vision of that is. This is the park space. You can see there a water feature, some buildings within the park. One of the negotiations we had with the city was if we're building the park, will you let us put a couple of small food and beverage places within the park. We could use that to sort of generate some income to help pay for the park. On the left side of this image, you can see the warehouse building converted, and then the streetcar tracks running immediately adjacent to that. So that's a really great, transit access that gets people right to the heart of this development and takes you away through downtown. Next, please. And then working on the buildings from north to south, again, these are very early sort of conceptual renderings, but this is what we call our E1 building. So there's about 140 apartment units in this building. A large part of this site, though, is really putting in a parking garage that will serve for parking for retail and office. So this is actually kind of a wrapper building that we're going to put apartments around the garage and the first floor retail. Next, please. And then moving over to the warehouse, this is kind of giving you a sense of how that warehouse building could look once it's been redeveloped. We're now standing in that 3rd Avenue Paseo, and then you can see a glimpse there of the office building kind of coming up behind that. And the architecture of the office is really sort of driven by, again, those historic references from Ybor City, and some of the sort of the symmetry of those buildings, the old cigar warehouses. Next, please. Coming down to street view, this would be an area of the warehouse immediately off the park space. So you can imagine that you'll have the open space of the park, but then you'll kind of come into kind of a smaller enclosed area outside where there would be opportunities to sit outside and go into the warehouse. So, next. Highlighting more of the office building here, and again, you can see the style that we're kind of going for here is very much pulling in that design style. And this is actually an historic district, so we actually have to go through an approval from the historic district for these buildings. This is now inside the Paseo again, with the warehouse on the right, but looking back to the south and what we call the E3 building. So this is a much larger building. That building is going to be probably closer to about 350, 360 apartment units. And again, a lot of retail on the first floor. The retail here, again, we have 60 feet between the warehouse and the apartment buildings, so we have 20 feet either side where we can do outdoor dining, and then we'll still maintain a 20-foot fire lane and pedestrian walkway in the middle. Next, please. And as I said, it's 18 development sites. It's 6 million square feet of development. It's probably not going to happen overnight, but when it's done, it's going to look something like this. And so thankfully, I've got Kevin and Deji and Rita and Tim sometimes helping me with this thing. It's a great project. We're very excited about it, and please come to Tampa and visit sometime.
Yes, so if that doesn't make us all excited about what we do and the passion we all have around it, because I'm thinking about the people living there and the activation of it, the marketing of it, and everything that we'll be doing around those spaces as we price in these new markets, everything we're doing. I can't look around the room and not see anyone in this room that will not be touching these eventually. And that's, everything that we've said, it's a tough real estate cycle, but look where we've been going and look what we're doing. As Pam said, we didn't stop, we haven't slowed down. Just like in the pandemic, we didn't stop, we didn't slow down. So with that, it kind of leads into our next topic. I'm going to bring an illustrious group of folks up here to give you more insights into it. As everything's been changing in the world past the pandemic, we also had to relook at our operating models. Because as we came out of the pandemic, everybody was looking for, it's going to go back to the way it was in 2020. Well, it's never going to go back to the way it was in 2020. When you look at things like what's happened in the workforce, where the rents are now, we saw this great escalation and now a stabilization of rents. and costs that have not come back down as you look at not just for personnel and people, but the cost to operate these buildings. So things changed. And as just for our own assets that we manage and all of our third party, we've been put to the challenge, and owners are asking all the time, what are you gonna do about it? Because they still wanna drive to that bottom line. They're driving to returns on their investment. They want to be able to manage all the expectations of their investors, our investors, and that means at an operational level, we have to look at what do we do to help with that equation. So we had to step back, and last year we started strategizing around this with a core leadership group, and we started asking these questions, what are we going to need to do to address these key challenges that are out there with the goals of driving revenue and then helping to optimize and reduce costs where we can, while increasing and making our services even better. So the team's gonna come up here today to talk about some of the things we're putting in place, which focused around marketing and sales optimization, optimizing on our technology, leaning in on technology where we can and leaving that personal touch where we should, improving on our satisfaction overall of our residents and our clients. That's who pays us money. Even Kettler, when they pay the management company, they're a client. We have to make sure our clients are satisfied. We don't make money if we don't have people that want to pay us to do this. Centralization, where that makes sense, so that we can reduce costs and look at ways that we can make the operations more efficient, more effective. And then looking at our technology always and recalibrating that. So what we want to do is make sure that we're not adding costs onto these operations that owners are getting to the point of saturation, and they are. There's a lot of technology out there that a lot of people can use. We got to be smart about it. That's our job. Our job is to come and be creative and innovative in that space, as well as Pam said, being creative and innovative when you're building the buildings, looking out what's in the market, looking what's going to be here 3 years from now. So we always have to be thinking that way. We have to have that clear vision and strategy of what we want to be, and we have to have a way to execute that. So with that, I would like to bring up to the stage Pat Casada, Daryl Smith, Kimberly Ramsey, Jeffrey Williams, and Matt Beres. I wanted to get a little bit, have this group get into some of the exactly what's happening to address this. And I want you to hear from them because I know some of you may have heard the phrase Gen 2, and that's what I was lovingly calling this new phase of ours as we go out in the industry. We've actually met with clients and we're marketing this in the same way, is us being forward-thinking, innovative, and coming out of that tough pandemic cycle and saying, hey, we don't just sit around and wait for things to happen, we're gonna make them happen. So with that, I'm gonna start with the people side of it with Jeffrey. Workforce challenges are out there. It's global. The workforce is shrinking. We all know that. That's just a fact. And everyone didn't come back to work like we were hoping we were all going to come back to work. So what are some of the challenges and opportunities that you're seeing as we are looking at recruiting talent and as we look forward past that to retaining our top talent?
Sure. So as Cindy mentioned in her prior statements last year, so 2022, we met quarterly as a leadership team and kind of the next layer from that, just to talk about metrics from all of our different groups and really trying to fire an arrow through if HR has a metrics challenge, what does that look like on the IT side and the PCM side? And then thus, how does that equate to issues we might have on the people side and operations? So when I think about the 2 R's, recruiting and retention, really at Kettler, and we've all been very transparent over the past 15 months, so I'm just going to continue to be transparent. We have a retention problem currently. We ended 2022 with an operations turnover of 62%, and you can imagine the pull that has on operations, but also our other corporate services groups. And so speaking of Gen 2, bringing it full circle, getting together and talking about, hey, these things are happening, we've got market conditions, we've got real estate right now, and I'll kind of speak quickly to my prior life. I've worked up and down the East Coast with utility, cable telecom, defense, and other like automotive, and they all have really great workforce development programs that are able to get folks out of school or off the streets and develop them into non-union or union jobs, and then you have a 40-year employee. And so what does it look like for real estate to be able to do that? And so we asked ourselves the question, what can we control? So that went back to Gen 2. Let's talk about roles and responsibilities. What do our jobs on site look like? Is an assistant community manager actually doing what assistant community manager should do? And then, what does Cindy Gordon have to say about that in terms of the related type of responsibilities? So Gen 2 brought in all of the players at Kettler from a corporate services side that impact processes on site. So right now, for an example, we're looking at roles and responsibilities, we're looking at centralizing, and I'm not gonna, bury the lead, and I'll let Kimberly speak to that. But right now, I'm proud to say that from an HR side and from the community managers and regionals who are here, we are seeing an anecdotal improvement in a lowering of formal discipline issues. Late last night, as you know, I pulled our through May turnover, and thankfully we're starting to see a turn. So right now, if our trend can continue, we can beat our voluntary turnover by about 9 to 10%, and we can get to below 50. So our goal is to get to like 45%, because that will make a huge difference. It's still terribly high, but we are working on a project here. We're looking at making sure that our employees on site can do the work that they derive value from. And so right now it's all about people. I could go on, so forgive me if I'm kind of going in a few tangents here. But Gen 2 is providing a great opportunity for us to just focus on the people on site, the jobs they do, and then how can groups like our departments and others support them while they do so.
That's great, and I think a part of that was also resetting the leadership. So I know there's been some organizational changes, and so I just want to take this at the same time to see, as you look at Jeffrey and Matt and Kimberly, and I'm going to skip over you.
I'm used to it.
How that guy is, but he's our CFO, come on. And Daryl is, I also made that decision to align these guys. I call them the S4, and they might call themselves the Super 4. I call them the Strategic 4, but they still want capes, but they won't wear them. That was because I wanted to see also, we wanted to elevate that alignment between operations, service operations, marketing, and HR, because that's what really that is the backbone of creating what we have to do every day to be successful out on these properties from a property management perspective. So leadership has also become a huge area of focus, I think, as you've been also getting out and getting back into performance management. So did you want to talk for a minute about just from a leadership perspective?
Yeah, so we started the past 2 years with a heavy focus on, folks are coming out of a pandemic, we're dealing with financial, mental stresses, familial stresses, and then that comes out in the workplace. So as many of you know who have worked with my team and I, that takes a lot of management, whether it's on the discipline side, the performance discipline side, but also on the benefit side, do they need to take FEMLA to deal with the personal need. But what has come from that now in 2023 is working with on-site leaders and the folks up here to say, we all recognize that that's what a lot of people are going through. We talked all last year about it. And I'm proud to say that many of the regionals and the community managers and other folks on site, we're starting to see a lot more support for the employee itself. It doesn't have to all come from corporate, so to speak. And I'm really proud to see that. I'm excited to see what happens over the next 18 months so that we can all support each other. But then that gets into leadership. So we talked about retention, but we all sat in the boardroom, I think last June, which is crazy, and we just said, look, we have an engagement problem. We have an on-site engagement problem, but that doesn't mean it's negative about the manager. It could be about the job. How are things structured? When folks start, do they really, really know what they should do at that property versus one down the street? So that's another thing that kind of birthed Gen 2. So that led to working with UKG on formalizing a proper performance management system. I'm proud to say right now about 72% of our employee population has goals in the systems. You're going to keep hearing from me this year, because it's not all about this year. It's about just developing the trend so that when you go into UKG, you can see goals without trading Excel spreadsheets back and forth. For performance management and how we support our employees on site as people managers is a massive focus, and that's going to bleed into proper leadership training, management training on the learning and development side as well.
Anybody else want to comment on the people side of it?
I could go and go, but I'm not going to.
So I'm going to turn us to one of the focus areas. Daryl actually last year had started what we were calling a sales-centric model, and he launched that. And so I'm just going to ask him and Kimberly to join together because it's a real collaborative effort. That has been built out, the model is there. Daryl has shepherded that through and really been the architect of it. So I want them to talk about what does that mean and what does that really look like in elevating how we look at our entire sales strategies, and also some new players we have on the team that I want to make sure you guys all know who they are and what their roles are in this new model.
Well, I'll start us off. I would say it's about 4 years ago, there was a roadmap leading up to Gen 2 with the sales-centric model. And with that, we started developing the customer journey. We really wanted to understand who our customers were, what their milestones were, and how we could better serve that. And the first segment of that is the sales process. And so with that, we started having a lot of focus groups internally to understand how our teams were performing, where they had friction, and certainly where our customers had friction along that sales process. And so with that, that helped us understand what technology we need to better enable less friction for our team members. One of the things that we really discovered about that is that our teams have a lot of weight, our sales teams, on their processes. I sometimes liken it to say, the processes that we've engineered and put in place go all the way back to when Fred, Barney Rubble first started running caves, and he kept stacking on more and more priorities to their roles. And so through that process with focus groups, it allowed us to understand, one, again, what technologies would help relieve that tension. So some of you are aware that we're using bots to help enable the leasing process, so that instead of us being in a 9-to-5 format, we can now do sales in a 24/7 format. Additionally with that, we also were able to confirm what standards and practices do we need to be much more competitive in today's world. I think Luke mentioned, which I can't wait to tease him later on, about technology and what that impact is going to be. And certainly we knew in the state that we were in, we also realized to be more competitive, we also have to change our practices and our governance and how we behave in those practices to better enable technology. With that, it was perfect timing for the sales-centric models we were thinking about Gen 2, which started about 2 years ago in partnering with Kimberly, Shelley, and Tracy. We were having what I call the 8 a.m. sunrise meetings for a while, where we started planning and putting together some of the pieces and puzzles to what does this process look like? What does the new governance look like? So how do we reimagine the sales process to be more competitive? And so with that, we really worked from A to Z on what are the steps to the planning process each month for your sales goals. And then how do you analyze them, during the month and planning for the next month for sales goals. So that's the core of what the sales governance looks like. We just launched, it rolled out to the teams probably a couple of weeks ago, fully to everybody. We did a soft launch about a year ago and just beta testing it and seeing where still some of the holes that we had, and we did some other focus groups and surveys with that, and that enabled us to get to our rollout that we have today. So the key goal with that, or two key objectives I would say with that is, one, we want to get better discipline with our teams around standards and practices. And how can technology enable that in a much better way to be more competitive? And then secondly, just having better governance around how we do things. Certainly for the stakeholders, our RPMs and VPs who oversee those assets, we also want to make sure that we're delivering a better experience for them as leaders so that they can see things in a more concise and more broader view in terms of performance, as opposed to, hey, this property is underperforming, but I don't know what the KPI benchmark is that we need to perform to. They now have standards that show, hey, here's the KPI, here's the benchmark that we should be performing to. But it's all at a glance. We're not going from property to property to try to understand what that performance is or why we're in an underperforming state. It's in the sales design, and now that Kimberly, I don't want to steal her thunder, she has a new partner with her that we're really excited about. It's going to also help us continue our process. But one of the things we also learned is that we were lacking in cohesion. And cohesion is something that you'll hear in brand management. That really means how do you get things sticky? How do you get things very consistent? And we knew we were having that problem, not only at KETTLER, but certainly in the industry. For those of you who worked at other multifamily environments, I'm sure you've seen that happen, where you have these standards and practices, but it doesn't appear that everybody's doing it. And some of that is, again, we had a lot of weight on the teams, and we really needed to assess where they can better perform, how we can optimize that view in a much more meaningful way. So with that, as we move to Gen 2, on my side of the house on marketing, it's developing that sales design, the practices, the standards, and then there's a handoff to Kimberly, which I'll turn to talk about where her and her team now in our partnership pick that up.
Perfect, thank you. Oh, please stand by. I think we're having technical difficulties. Can you hear?
Button turn.
Yes, that's turned.
The green light on.
No, the green light didn't come on.
I think Daryl just wanted to steal my thunder. He took the batteries out.
That would be Daryl.
He's like, well, I'll just go on then. No, thank you, Daryl. You summed it up perfectly. So as Daryl mentioned, we have a new member of the team. We've hired a director of centralized sales, and that's Tyrrell, who's with us today. And she had her first session this morning with some of the on-site teams. So as Daryl said, it was a partnership definitely with the marketing team. Tracy and Michelle were heavily involved as we went through this entire process. But Tara's role, how it differentiates is that, where Daryl's team will be bringing a lot of the sales-centric data and statistics and some of the information regarding the customer engagement, Tara's basically going to be taking the operations leadership part of that and some of the training that surrounds that as well. So we've recently rolled it out. June is the first month. And so, as we mentioned, it's about having consistent goals. Of course, we always had sales goals. And we had incentives and things like that for our teams, but it was really elevating the consistency of that. And instead of having, it's also going to lighten the team's load in terms of the community managers and the regional property managers, because where they have so many different things to focus on, Tara's role is all about sales. That is her, central focus, is that she will be focusing on our progress in the sales capacity. So she'll be making sure that those goals are set on a monthly basis, collaborating with the regional property managers, the VPs, and the community managers to make sure that they're, set at the beginning of the month, that they're realistic, that they're achievable, they're SMART goals, if you will, that there's incentives in place. And then she's also having, sales connect calls like we did this morning with some of our properties that are on the watch list or more focused communities that have bigger opportunities in terms of, the occupancy and the financial goals that we're striving for. In addition to that, she's doing some monthly sales classes for all sales associates to help them be more engaged and to really share best practices. And just bringing like an elevated sales training. We're reimagining what the training will look like. So further in the year, she has a pretty busy schedule. Further in the year, she's going to be, reimagining what those sales classes and the onboarding look like, as well as implementing a coaching program to really, elevate the onboarding process for new associates joining the KETTLER team and get them excited about sales from day one, but also to help us continue to build on that career path so that we have people that are engaged, that we have that stickiness factor to help with, long-term retention of our associates, and that they really understand that career path to continue to grow in their career with KETTLER as well.
And one thing I'll add, just to brag on what Tara has done, I'm just really excited about what she's brought to the table. But in the first 30 days, which she just shared with us a couple weeks ago, her strategy. And when I looked at it, I had no idea when she was coming on board, what would cohesion look like? What's the strategy around that? What does that look like? And she really has a lot of programmatic elements to it to really support our team in getting resources. So when we think of underperformance and we think of the competing priorities that they have, she's there to ensure that, hey, they've got all the resources that they need to be successful. Not only just the on-site teams, but certainly for the managers that also lead them. So I think this is going to get us to a better success point, certainly get us to those revenue marks that I know is music to Greg's ears and others in the room. But really excited about what she's doing. And really, I describe it more as like a programmatic, opportunity, really elevating our sales culture.
So one thing if you could add into that is, because of Brian and Elise's team's role in this, is that you've all become very data centric. We are using our BI tools now. We are looking at that data and that information. And really bringing that in about how is that data helping you all know as leaders in this area that the programs are working.
Yeah, I think on my side, which was the left side of the screen that you guys just switched, and just maybe go back to that and we'll come back to this one. Thank you. Is one is helping us understand our technology performance. Are the tools that we're bringing in as part of that sales design working? And then how do we keep compass with those partners that are provisioning those technologies? How do we keep compass with them to ensure that they're relevant to our strategy? So the data is helping us with that. And then one is also helping us look at just overall sales performance. And then certainly that backs to Kimberly and Tyrrell on how they're also looking at performance on their side. But for me, it's looking at how that technology investment and how our standards are still maintaining relevance.
Absolutely, and to build on that, this is going to be supporting a lot of our, key performance indicators. So we'll be looking at our occupancy compared to budget across the board. Also creating leaderboards so that we can monitor not only, community performance, but individual performance to see where we have our top performers and to see where we have opportunities for improvement and to continue the development for certain associates. In addition, she's also playing a role when we talk about sales. It's not just new sales coming in or new leases, but also that renewal process. And so looking at renewal retention, we're going to be combining that with technology. Some of that is like in our Renew tool, so that we'll still continue to balance, the efficiencies of technology, but with that personal touch as well, to see if we are securing renewals faster, which of course we all know would allow us then to be more proactive in managing the occupancy and the rents and really optimizing rent as we move forward. So there are quite a few key performance indicators that we'll be monitoring to see the success and even the retention of our sales associates. Seeing if this investment in them and helping them get more excited and engaged about their, sales career and their career path with KETTLER also leads to reduced, retention or reduced turnover and longer retention of our associates.
And just to add to that, just stakeholders, with that to answer the second part of your question. Elise oversees the sales technology and also the standards and practices and the data. The data portion is managed by Amy, so she aggregates all of the data to put together the reports and distribute them out. And then the next, if you want to flip, Brian, team member, and continue on the customer journey is Brian Hedges joined us as Senior Director of Customer Experience. When you think of the customer journey, again, the first part is how we acquire our new prospect. And if you move down now to residents, we also want to understand what is that resident experience about? How do our residents feel about us? What do they feel about our product? But also in that, as you see here are four, sort of, you can't see all of them, I'll read them out. There's four pillars that Brian will be looking at in terms of developing that customer data platform. One is our product. How do our consumers feel about our product? How does that influence our design standards? How does that influence how we engage and create community activation? On the B2B side, which is our business to business, which is our clients, how do they feel about our service and what things do they want? How do we continue to grow their life cycle with us? Our B2C is our business to consumer, which is our residents. What is their experience and how do we manage them through from the beginning of the customer journey to renewal? And that middle segment is called service recovery. So that means if they're not happy, how do we manage them to renewal? We don't just want to bring them in and say, gosh, you were my best friend at the sales point, but I'm not going to talk to you until 30 days before it's time to renew and say, hello, you want to come for a pizza party? They may have a temperature, they may be upset. So how do we manage that through to the renewal process so that we can have better opportunities for projections and predictivity on that new revenue or that renewal of that new revenue? And the last thing is what we call our AX experience. I know these are I always tell people have a lot of X's in the customer experience space, but EX refers to employee experience, which gets to the general land. How do people feel in working at KETTLER? And so that's a better partnership with Jeff and HR and understanding all the things around DEI, benefits, and other culture experience. And then last is AX as part of that. AX refers to associate, that's our frontline salespeople. So understanding what tools do they need, how do we maintain relevancy with them and being able to execute the sales environment.
And I think as you guys are listening, you're hearing a lot about data, and I'm just going to say it again, data-centric. We have tons of data at our fingertips, but we know how to use it now. And I think the pandemic allowed us time to put some of these platforms in place that we needed to get the data. But now what we also realized is we were pushing a lot of data out to a lot of people, but not really thinking about who really needs to analyze that data and come back and come out with those what are those findings? How do we become more predictive, and how do we use this data more intentionally? So some of the layers that Daryl and Kimberly have put in, and now we have the people in place that can do that. So the team members can focus on, especially on the site level, on their core job, while there's a different level employee that's really looking at those analytics to say where we can pull different levers to increase that overall performance. So it's exciting to have these in place, and I know on the experience side, it's critically important to be ahead of the curve, know your residents, know what they want, and then we're going to be able to touch on all those pieces, as well as our clients. Because we can lose clients just as fast as we can lose a resident if we don't do a good job with how we're onboarding them and then maintaining that overall relationship. And I think that helps our team members a lot, so they're not feeling just weighted down, do this better, do this better, do this better. We're bringing them solutions, and we're helping to upgrade that team. So with that, the next thing that we looked at, one of the core areas, was around centralization. So when you're re-looking at your operating model, oftentimes you're looking at what should be decentralized, what should be centralized. And we really realized at that point when we looked at what is it that we do that drives value to the client, there's those things that's important. And I use my 4 that I use all the time with the team is, I want the team members on site to focus on sales, the experience, knowing their financials and making sure that building is operating in beautiful condition and shape so that the asset itself is being managed effectively. So there's a lot of things that were happening on the site team that are transactional, a lot of paperwork still. So a lot of the back-end accounting got taken care of a long time ago, so that's what Pat's been talking a minute about that. We're the back-end operations. Well, let's move that model up a little closer. And so we have Kimberly, if you want to talk a little bit about that central office and the idea of bringing in some of that central-wide, more transactional things to a more central function, and what are the areas that we're going to hope to see great improvements around by bringing that into central office.
Absolutely. Similar to Tara's role as the Director of Centralized Sales, we've also hired and promoted Kimberly Athridge from within to be the Director of the Central Business Office. And that she will have a team that rolls up to her Central Business Managers. The idea is that it will take a lot of, as Cindy said, those administrative tasks off of the site teams, and really, help us to be more efficient in those processes. So it will allow the site teams and the community managers to really focus on those 4 key points that Cindy mentioned were so important. Is really the customer experience, making sure we're maintaining the standards at our communities, delivering the highest level of customer service, and really maximizing on that customer experience and maximizing on our NOI. Finding ways to control expenses and to keep, optimizing rents and driving the NOI. On the flip side of that, because we will have these people that are solely dedicated to that and not dealing with all of the other things that happen in our communities on a day in, day out basis, we will have efficiencies with all of those things where, ideally people are, getting filed on even faster, and that there's more diligence and consistency in the delinquency calls and follow-up. More diligence in communicating with the attorneys and updating our eviction trackers and our delinquency trackers to make sure that we've really got our finger on the pulse of that and are doing everything we can to collect in as timely a manner as possible from residents that are outstanding. Some of the other parts of that also will be helping with the renewal process, generating some of the recert letters or recertification letters for some of our tax credit communities. So it's really alleviating a lot of things from the site team level, but also helping us to be, just more detailed and more consistent in those processes to also help to generate stronger NOI at our communities as well.
And it'll also help with some of the workforce challenges we have, because we'll look at how by centralizing we may be able to have a more efficient ratio of people to properties. And we'll be looking to launch this. We've heard launch so far.
Yes.
And when will you be launching this?
December. I'm kidding. This has been an ongoing topic. No, to Cindy's point, one, it's also going to allow for, more remote positions for some of these. So again, that allows us that opportunity for longer retention, because we know that's important to some of our team members or some of the workforce that's out there. So we will have longer retention in that regard. The other benefit of it is that if somebody is, out, or if you do have turn, you'll have a team of people that can fill that gap and fill that void so that we continue to maintain those operational efficiencies. And we are rolling this out. We are scheduling a meeting at the end of June to share with the site team associates. I'm working with Greg and his team to select the pilot communities that will be participating. It'll most likely be about 10 communities for the initial rollout so that we can work through all the kinks and make sure that everything's smooth before we open it up to the rest of our KETTLER properties and our third-party clients as well. So once we have that communication, Kimberly's going to start the interview process very quickly, and we will have everyone hired and in that training process by mid-July, and fully launching at the pilot communities by August 1st for a 60-day pilot before we, broaden it to the larger group.
And, so I'm always looking to Pat and going, what's your secret sauce? How are you getting these teams to work this way, that we've got them working across a multitude of properties and owners, and we get this very same consistent feedback? So I asked Pat up here to just talk a little bit about what's been the success of that, and what are the things we all need to make sure we're doing so that we can copy that success as we look to centralize some of these functions.
Yeah, so, accounting's been centralized from inception, but I would say that it hasn't always worked as well as it has today. And I think that process started 6 or 7 years ago when I got to stick my head into property management, look under the hood. I wouldn't say it was on fire, but there was a lot of smoke. Like all the things on the dashboard were like, you know, check engine lights on, everything, you know, maintenance hasn't been done for a while. And part of that was, you know, as you looked at it, you know, the way that it was functioning was, you know, we had 10 different accounting systems, and within each accounting system, you had multiple variations. You might have a different front end and back end process. And so you might have, you know, 20 different variations. And so we had so many different processes for the same exact thing. Simple bank rec, you might have 10 different ways to do something. And it was just chaotic, to be honest. And I think a lot of the team was burned out. And so that begun a similar transformation process that you guys are talking about right here on the accounting side. And so in terms of the keys for success, I would say the first one is just planning. I mean, plan. I mean, we spent, I think you mentioned that you guys started this over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. You know, we started talking through and doing a deep dive of everything, and working with interdepartment, you know, because every process impacts other departments. And so you can't just think, how can I just make this better for us? But you've got to work across the teams. And so we just need to reevaluate our entire strategy with property management, how all the, you know, front end that's coming in, how that's making it through the middle and back end. And we made some significant strategic decisions at that time to help alleviate some of the back end issues. I would say the second thing is standardizing the processes. You know, we've moved, I would say 95+% of our jobs now are on one platform, and we use the same technology and everything. And so that allowed us to standardize processes. I mean, that makes it a whole lot more efficient. You talk about, you know, controlling costs. I mean, before, I mean, we were just continuing to bolt on new technologies, anything that would come our way just to make it through. And so this allowed us to take a step back, standardize everything. It also, you know, we needed to reorganize in some areas. You know, we had to also ensure the teams had the tools to be successful. I think that we were asking a lot of the accountants. It was almost like I liken it to they're trying to do their job with one arm behind their back. And so we had to sit back, make sure that they had the technologies, the process, the tools, everything so that they could be successful. I was trying to elevate the team. And as an example, I didn't ask permission to share this, but I'll ask for forgiveness later. But, you know, Jeannie, I could, you know, when I stepped in, you know, I forget exactly her title, you know, 6 or 7 years ago, but, you know, she was spending so much time, she was handling the corporate books and she was reviewing, 85 financial statements every single month, you know, and that's just not sustainable. And so she was hesitant to come into the role that she's in today because of just the role that she was in, and everyone was stuck in what they had to do. And so by reorganizing and shifting the work and elevating other folks, it allowed her to step into that position and to allow them to succeed. So I think a lot of it is just making sure that when you do a centralized model, you're giving them the tools to succeed in that model. And then I think it's also just a continual mindset of excellence. You know, in our group, we always usually choose 1 or 2 things each year where we focus on what are we going to improve, what are we going to tackle. And it's usually a project that's going to take a year. It's not something like simple. And so we always have that as a goal. It might come from other departments in terms of linking up with them on how to make other processes successful. But we do analyze technologies. I'm always fearful when you guys all go off to conferences because you come back with these shiny new toys that you want to show me and implement. And the reality is it's nice and some things might work. You know, a lot of this has different impacts downstream. It's like a whack-a-mole. You might fix one thing, but you create another problem. And so we do look at technologies we try to figure out, and we've got to be willing to say no. I mean, there are several people in this room that are involved in a project that we're trying to use a new forecasting tool. We invested a lot of time into that, and at the end of the day, it wasn't right. and we just said, sorry, we walked away from it, and because it wasn't a good fit, honestly, the product just wasn't far enough along. It will get there, but it's just not there yet, and so we have to be willing to say no. But I think the number one ingredient at the end of the day is the people. I'm blessed beyond measure to have the greatest team. We're a weird bunch of group. They're all in the back. Of course. These guys are hardcore. You know, sometimes I wonder if I'm the boss. I mean, I get yelled at. But seriously, they're a phenomenal group. Like Cindy said, I received so many accolades for this team, both internal and external. They do represent Kettler well. They pursue excellence. And, you know, hopefully I'm not jinxing myself, but I don't think that we've had, from a people perspective, any turnover. And the one turnover we did have is back. So, and I just say that just because we act as a family, you know, and this is a family at the end of the day, and we love Kettler, and we treat each other, you know, with a lot of respect. I love whenever they bring something to me, we work through it. As leaders, we have to roll up our sleeves. We have to dive in with them. And I think that's, you know, amongst all these people, they've worked so hard to represent well. I just wanted to take this moment just to recognize them, and that's why we're successful.
It's amazing, and we can learn from inside our own house, and that'd be even better when we can learn from each other. And Pat has been a part of the leadership teams as we've gone through these strategies, and so we work very closely together because we want to leverage these great experiences that we have. Before I get off of centralization, there's two other people in the room that also been a big part of this, which is Cindy Gordon and Sean Brummett, because they've been in a centralized model for a while. Sean took on us outsourcing with Red River and keeping all of our technology done and run centrally and more efficiently. And Cindy's group has continued to bring in more and more of the contracting so that we can, you know, have, you know, better strategies around not just, you know, how we process a contract, but also around how we go out and we get the best pricing and negotiate deals and everything else. And has always looked and continued to bring in and how can they do more centralized focus. And so those have also been very successful models that have worked, and we keep leveraging off of all the time. Probably a little too much. They could probably throw things at me and say, we'll take a few more people would be really helpful. But it's what makes us, and I hate to say it, we're lean and mean. We're a lean, mean fighting machine, but we get it done. And I'm going to turn now to service operations, because that is an area where if we can figure out a way to centralize all of it, that would be interesting, but I'm not sure that we can really do that with Matt. But everyone and anyone that is out on a property knows they are such a backbone to everything that goes on. They are about why our residents stay. That they are so important to why the residents are going to stay in the community, the experience they have, how those buildings are going to operate, how we manage our CapEx and everything else. And so it is an area that we also stepped back and said, and, you know, bringing Matt in as a leader was one step toward that, but it was also, what do we need to do? Because they are workforce challenged. You know, a lot of people decided to retire out of this industry during the pandemic, and they're not coming back. And how do we attract that new talent in and retain them? So we have to be just as innovative and creative as we look at our service operations. So that Matt can share some of what he's doing in his area, which is pretty exciting.
Well, thank you, Cindy, very much, and appreciate all the service associates that are out there watching this, and my team, direct team. Good news is, guys, technology is never going to replace you, at least not in the near future. We're not quite there with AI that's fixing toilets and fixing air conditioners for you. That said, we have taken a real hard look at how to leverage technology more effectively to make our service teams a lot more proactive in what they do, is also just better trained and hold that retention. And a few things that we've really launched in the last year, first and foremost was setting up some KPIs. I'm not sure what I haven't gotten. I got my training behind me first, so I'll start with that. This year, I'm really excited to announce that we've launched a new technology training platform for our guys. If you ask any maintenance associate out there, every single person, from the tech in the field to the service manager, wants more training. They want more knowledge. They want to be able to do their job better, more effectively, more efficiently. You know, our guys don't want to spend 8 hours troubleshooting something if they can do it in 2. And so if we can figure out a way of increasing their knowledge and getting them the tools they need to do their job more effectively, not only are they feeling better about what they do, but they're delivering a better resident experience. They're getting out of that apartment quicker. They don't have to go back to that apartment on a repeat call. And so Interplay is a really innovative technology that we partnered with. It is a web-based virtual learning platform. They have over 200 training modules with hundreds of hours of video content packaged in bite-sized elements that are really geared towards service professionals. So if someone wants to learn about how to install a garbage disposal, they don't have to sit in the course. They can pull it up on their phone, they can go through a quick module of how to double check the electric on it before they work on it to make sure they're safe with it. Very short snippets that gain critical knowledge in core functional areas, and those areas also ladder. So you start with a technician who might want a little bit about basic electric, how to use a voltmeter. You can run through the safety plug programs on that. Next course up becomes, okay, how do I troubleshoot a circuit? And so on forth. The platform runs from the most basic technology applications, technical applications, all the way through to troubleshooting boilers and chillers and more centralized equipment. So not only is this going to be a tool that will help our teams operate better and more safely, but it's going to add to the stickiness factor. We see a lot of movement in the maintenance service space. Technicians move because they want to see opportunity for their careers. They want to see better paycheck for their families. And if we can figure out a way of providing that training and knowledge growth within our family, they don't have to go looking across the street or down or to another organization. So this is really a key piece of getting that retention for our service associates and really fostering a culture of excellence in the field. So that's the recruitment piece. The other piece that I'm really excited about is we've been doing this for a while. We know what drives value in the service side. We just haven't really measured it and put focus on the way we need to. What's going to matter is how quickly do the work orders get done. That's what a resident cares about. I made the phone call, I got a problem with my air conditioning. Did you get in there and did you fix it quickly and did you fix it right? That's what most of our customers really care about. The other, and so we've set some KPI standards around that. We want to see work orders done, completed within 48 hours. Our goal is to get 90% of work orders on average completed within 48 hours. We're not there yet. We got work to do, but that's the goal we're going to target. And I think keep a laser focused on that. Our teams will be able to deliver on that. The other KPI that we have in there is making sure that we're not having a large backlog of deferred work orders. Oftentimes, our teams get busy, the work order gets put on hold for parts on order, what have you, and sometimes it doesn't get returned to as promptly as it needs to until a resident makes that second phone call or that third phone call. So we are going to really start focusing around making sure those deferred work orders, those things that don't get done in 48 hours, they don't stack up. And the only way we're going to do that is by keeping our eyeballs on them more regularly. And I'll come back to that in a second. The other KPI are really around the move-in experience. How quickly can we turn a unit? And everybody in this room, no doubt knows, a vacant unit is a unit that's not earning us any rent. And so the sooner we can get that unit back in production, get ahead that's in that, sleeping in that bed in that apartment, we are creating value in terms of revenue and for both Kettler and our customer clients. The other piece of the move-in experience, though, is making sure that move-in is delivered properly. The most annoying thing for any resident is moving in and something not working within the first week or two of being there. There's always going to be stuff that comes up. It's maintenance, stuff breaks. But if you walk in the front door and your garbage disposal is not working on day one, that does not sit well with your user experience or resident experience, and it's not going to translate well into the customer experience, the Google reviews, what have you. So maintenance is really on the front line of ensuring a positive resident experience from day one. And so those are the core KPI that we're really focused around, and we are using Orion BI as our technology tool to help create the visibility on that. And by having the dashboards that the regional service team, the service team, community managers, everyone can look at, they can start to see where they are on their performance and ensure that they're keeping up to the mark. And a little friendly competition never hurts either. Every service manager wants to be better than the guy down the street. So we're going to make sure that they have access to see how they were stacking up and get that sort of drive to better excellence. And then the last piece, and this really overlaps a lot with Cindy's division, is figuring out how to better centralize our contracting process and develop better standards around who we work with as vendors, the type of work they do for us, and try to leverage value in those contracting experiences. Right when I came into Kettler, I came out of the REIT space where everything was centralized, everything was run by a central team, standards were there. We're a little different here at Kettler, and that's great. It's part of what makes us special. We have different clients, different needs. Different ownership groups change that requirements, but we can do a lot better at creating more value and looking at how we centralize some of our activities. We don't need 3 different scopes of work for generator services. A generator is a generator. It doesn't matter whose community it's at. We should have the single standard, and there's no reason why it shouldn't all be under a single contract. So we can say, leverage our scale. Same with landscaping, same with pest control. There's lots of things that we do in a very distributed way right now, that if we centralize those functions and leverage Kettler's volume, 18,000 apartment units, we can get a lot better value on that contract when we're bidding it out as a group, as opposed to bidding out 200 unit community here, 100 unit community over there. So I think that's where there's a lot of opportunity within the way this new Gen 2 operating model to figure out how to be more efficient and also take some of that burden off the site teams. It's a pain redoing contracts every year. If we can figure out a way of doing that in a more central fashion, that just releases our teams to do what they do best, which is provide a great customer resident experience.
No, that's fantastic. And Daryl, I'm gonna pick on you on a question that wasn't on here, because one of the things you guys should hear consistently, we have strategy. We have a roadmap to where we're going with this Gen 2. We have goals and objectives. We are using data heavily to help us evaluate, measure, and monitor where we're going. But all of that, when we started this out, and we rolled all of this out to the extended leadership teams on the management side earlier this year, but we started it out with the why to the what. We said, this is why we're doing this is what we're doing. But we also talked to them about the importance of being brand-centric and the importance of us all caring about what our brand is here at Kettler, and that doing all of these standards and this consistency are here for a reason. So Daryl, could you just take a couple minutes and talk about really how we're driving to that more brand-centric model across all of our teams,
Yes.
bringing us back together again more holistically.
So I think what's unified is, particularly in the last couple of months as we're on the roadmap to Gen 2, is just data. And I see better cohesion just in the leadership team. Each Monday, we get together, we look at different sets of reporting tools, and really look again at what are those benchmarks and what are the performance expectations and where are we? It's less, let me say it this way, we're building better business partnerships across each other versus calling each other and saying, hey, Kimberly, what happened? Why didn't you do that? I don't know, Daryl, why didn't you do that? It's more cohesion around, hey, I see this data, where can we better create better opportunities to service not only ourselves as customers to each other, but certainly for our external customers and our B2B customers as well. So data is the first step in terms of building that cohesion, but also going back to business partnerships, it's really working more cohesively together. Because if we're very cohesive as leaders, certainly the output to our teams is going to cascade down if they see that there's an expectation on how our teams and our other stakeholders under us should be performing and working together. And then lastly, I think going to kind of what you were saying, Cindy, is just recognizing who is our customer, who are we here for, and how are we provisioning service to them. Not only are we looking in that brand-centric model to be brand-centric and be more cohesive and working together, but by the way, when I say that, one of the exercises that we went through is I used some case studies that are very, very popular in marketing. I used Chick-fil-A, which is one, Starbucks, which is one, and really when we talk about being cohesive and consistent, for those of you who go, I'll just use Chick-fil-A really quick. When you go to Chick-fil-A, you have an expectation on consistency of that nugget, right? No matter whether you go to one in DC or whether you go to one in Seattle, there's a consistency, whether it's in behavior with the staff or whether it's just how the product is served to you. So similarly, you have the retail environments, hospitality environments that also have that level of centralization and consistency in how they deliver the brand experience. And so we're driving and sort of understanding, what does that mean for us? What does that mean for us in the multifamily environment? When you look at the hospitality environment, it's a very, very, very similar business model to what we have, but they execute hospitality and that consistency, very, very well. And so we're also looking at other opportunities to model very much what they're doing and bringing that cohesion and consistency to us. So understanding what performance means, who it's driven for, what do they want for that is extremely important. And I think everything that you've heard today, you've heard several different points about people, you've heard different points about everybody focusing on service and how we deliver that. You've heard a lot about technology and how that comes together. all of that builds what is a brand experience and building those standards around it to execute. So being brand-centric is really, I think, essential to Gen 2. And I think we've already started modeling it. I think we've seen that already today.
And it's just as an end point on that was that we saw the need, we needed to bring all of our teams together. Now, our site teams aren't here today, but we always have to remember they're a part of this larger team. And that brand cohesion is so important because I started to see a little bit of fracturing off of, people not understanding why we have these standards, why they're important. And they are important because that's what delights the customers, not just our residents, but our clients. And then we can see Kettler as a unified way that we do our business. And so we started to educate and use this year as a platform to help educate people to why this is so important to everything that we do. So that that created some of the glue of pulling this all together to get to the end result that we're hoping to get to.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about data that's been really interesting experience as we're kind of all elevating and touring and understanding how to use it is that I think most people assume that data is something to catch you doing something wrong. And it's not to catch you doing something wrong, but it's to understand what can we control, as Jeffrey was saying earlier. But then also how do we create continuity through those controls, as opposed to, all right, this is happening at this property, this is happening at this property. We're kind of doing this, what I call cherry picking, how we're managing operations versus in a brand-centric environment, it's sort of elevated to a platform. And you can see what's going on in that platform experience with BI tools and other data reporting measures to be able to have that cohesion and that consistency of that expectation.
All right, thank you all. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for everything you guys did. And thanks for coming back. I feel like we're at a play where you went through the first 2 acts and it was really long. You had intermission. This is going to go really fast at the end, and we'll get you to happy hour. However, I want to kind of end the day on a people note, and this is what makes everything work here at Kettler, and it's a very special place to work. I think you guys all know that. I hope you know that. And about in 2021, I believe it was, we started launching more specific strategies and actions around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we've also had a culture and engagement committee that's been at the company, I think, when I started. Yeah, you actually had, I think, culture and engagement under you at one point when I started the company. So that's been around a long time. So this year we've taken the time to bring those 2 things together. And so I want to just introduce the team that's behind doing all of these things that you see, events that you're going to see coming up, all the things we do around volunteering, all the things you're seeing now on our social media. We've really amped up our presence here and showing the importance of this, we believe how important this is here at Kettler. And so the council leadership, I am acting more as kind of a sponsor at the end of the day. We have Daryl Smith, Jeffrey Williams, and Leslie Thomas who sit at the leadership level. But I will tell you right now, Leslie does a huge amount of work around this, and she's going to come up in a second to talk more about it. I would say she's our taskmaster and makes sure that we are staying on track and really trying to fulfill the vision, mission, and strategies that we have around this. And then we have our wonderful council members who commit above their already super busy schedules. They come and they meet and they help push this agenda forward with everybody. So Allison, Michael, Casey, Jessica, Diana, Catherine, Christine, Josiah, and Terry, all the names you see up there. We can't do this without this team that's willing to take a little extra time out of their day and focus on this with us. So I just want to give a round of applause to all these guys. I'm going to bring up Leslie, who's going to give us some more background into this.
Thank you, Cindy. I know I'm the last speaker here today, so I know the happy hour smells really good right now, but bear with me for just a couple more minutes. And as Cindy introduced, I just want to talk today about diversity, equity, and inclusion, the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as the focus on culture and engagement programs at Kettler. And so as an organization, we continuously are committed to fostering an environment where every individual feels valued, respected, and included. And we recognize that our diverse workforce really brings unique perspective, experiences, and talents that drive innovation and success here at Kettler. So why are we placing such an emphasis on these programs? And The answer is very simple. And I could give you a very long explanation, but I'm going to keep it very brief. Diversity, equity, and inclusion combined with culture and engagement are not just buzzworthy terms or trendy initiatives anymore. I know that we've heard that for a long time. I know that during COVID, those terms really came to life and really started being focused on. But they're fundamental principles that contribute to the value, the growth, strength, and sustainability of KETTLER and its culture. So let me explain a little further. As you can see here, we have two centralized circles that highlight DEI and culture and engagement. So first and foremost, let's focus on the DEI side. Diversity. It's more than just representation, right? We all know that. It's about harnessing the power of different backgrounds, cultures, genders, abilities, and perspectives that really fuel activity and problem solving throughout our workforce. And then by embracing diversity, we can tap into a wide range of ideas, approaches, enabling us to adapt and thrive in an ever-changing business landscape. What is equity? Everybody always asks, well, we understand the term as a whole DEI, but what truly does equity mean? Equity is the next crucial aspect that we focus on in DEI. It means ensuring fairness and justice in our policies, our practices, and our opportunities. We want to create an environment where everyone has an equal chance to succeed, regardless of their background and their identity. And then finally, inclusion. Inclusion is actively valuing and respecting every individual's contribution and creating a sense of belonging. And so what we try to do with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Culture and Engagement Council is really bringing those three elements to life through the campaigns that we lead, through the social media posts that you will see, through the fostering of our employees and sharing their stories. This is how it comes to life. And as DEI crosses over to culture and engagement, we've identified key areas that KETTLER wants to focus on. As the council met and as we all looked at those opportunities, what are some of those key areas that cross over? Culture, engagement, inclusion, belonging, training, connect, career growth, recruiting, and retention. And those are all terms that we've heard during your survey, during the survey that you took last year in the fall. And so we've gathered a lot of that feedback and aligned it with where we want to kind of meet those two areas, those two circles together. And so we have key 5 areas that we really want to focus on. Educating, and behind the chair, so I'm sorry if you can't see it, but I'll say them. Educating, inspiring, engaging, connecting, and then activating. Those are some of those key 5 circles that we take with all of our campaigns that continuously trying to push that forward. So the DEI and the DE&I and Culture and Engagement Council really aims to foster a workplace culture that promotes collaboration, creativity, and high employee engagement. And so to support these efforts, the council will continue to implement various initiatives that meets these goals and these objectives, that meets our mission, that continuously looks at, are we always upholding our commitment and are we always upholding our focus on some of these key issues, whether it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, or the focus on culture and engagement. So the DEI, the council meets once a month, and we really look at a larger matrix based on the survey that you took last year. We developed some key focus areas, and we mapped that out into clear objectives that are met with goals, and how do we track that. And so we really look at opportunities throughout all of these objectives and goals. We look at opportunities to raise awareness align our objectives with our programs, increase employee engagement, and foster culture that we love so much here at KETTLER. And so we have a robust calendar that some of you have maybe seen already, where we continuously look at campaigns to engage and for engagement or volunteering opportunities, wellness through the support of Michael Canonis and working with Jeff on a little bit more of the HR side, the wellness focus that we've taken into 2023. And so what programs do we need to develop and continuously align with some of our objectives and goals as a whole? And so we know that there's still a lot to be done in the journey. We're not at the end of the journey. And so we've created a maturity model to look at where we started, where we are today, and then where we really want to take KETTLER, focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and culture and engagement. We've heard your feedback, and we have some key objectives that we want to reach. So I want to take also this opportunity to let you all know that the council is looking for new volunteers to participate in the DEI Culture and Engagement Council. And so if you are interested in participating in the council, please reach out to me. You can email me, you can text me, you can even send me a message on Teams. And I will happily walk you through our charter, some of our key objectives and goals, as well as some of the key programs that we're trying to launch, and we always need the extra hands to help us achieve that. So I'm gonna end it here and just really emphasize that as we continue to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion in culture and engagement, we're laying a foundation for a stronger, more resilient, and more successful KETTLER. Together, we want to embrace our differences. We want to foster a culture of inclusion and create an environment where all employees can thrive, feel connected, and come together in a more engaged workforce. Thank you.
I just wanted to just take this minute just to make some just kind of quick closing statements. I'm going to read some of it because I thought about this a lot as we were prepping for this meeting, and I hope to get them across. And so, excuse me if I'm reading. I'm not good at memorizing. Again, I wanted to end the day about people, because at the end of the day, it is the entire KETTLER team that makes the magic work here every day, and that includes all of our associates that work on our properties every day. So how about, again, a round of applause for our site team members. I can't say it enough, they truly are on the front lines, and none of this really comes through full achievement without considering all those people every day and how we work with them every day. And we are working very hard to bring them together as part of the KETTLER, making sure they're feeling like they are included in the KETTLER family. And there is no more us versus them, corporate versus site team. We're breaking that barrier down completely, and I'm excited to see that we're finally really getting some good traction around that. I want to thank Leslie and her team, Josiah, Nico, for again coming and helping putting this all together. We are not really good customers of theirs. We're usually last minute, end of the day, can we do this, can I have a slide, can do this, and I have to say every single time they rise to the occasion, they pull this together and they make it a really good event for all of us, so I really want to thank you. And all the presenters and panelists who I know are super busy, that you took time and wanted to participate in this and really start to get hopefully some key messages across for everybody, so that we all can be together and focus on that vision, get away from our desk for a few minutes and think of the bigger picture here at KETTLER. And I hope everything you've heard today is a demonstration of how we're growing, not only as a business, but as a team. We're expanding our market reach and our core capabilities to further diversify and to be able to be nimble and opportunistic. I think you heard that a lot from throughout the whole day. That's what makes KETTLER a competitive force to be reckoned with, and that's how I feel about us. We are to be reckoned with. We are out in the market. We are a driving force. I want to be a leader in the market. I know you all want to be a leader in the market always. We have to look at all opportunities available to us and seize our innovative approach to be forward-thinking, from our investment strategies to our development approach and how we operate these assets. And together, this is creating the KETTLER value and how we differentiate ourselves in a highly competitive industry. And we can't stop. We can never stop being this way. I often think of the word pivot when I reflect on KETTLER and its history. And I do think about it a lot. And under the exceptional leadership of Bob KETTLER, this company has always continued to pivot and be able to be nimble and change as the industry changes. We've approached challenges that are just part of being a real estate investor, developer, and operator, and we continue to pivot, and we have been able to take those challenges and move them to opportunities. And that is leadership from the top, and so I just want to thank Bob for his continued leadership and driving us to. So, however, as we pivot, we need to take a disciplined approach to that. An approach that is structured and intentional and focused on our key objectives. Therefore, our strategy, vision, and plan must be executed in a thoughtful way. The executive leadership team is working together every day to ensure we're all aligned on our strategies, goals, and objectives. And with that, I'd like to introduce my last word for today. You heard it from Daryl a lot, and it is the word cohesion. And formally, what does that mean? It's the forming of a united whole. We have a strong culture and a set of core values. You see those around the room today, so take time to read them. They're just fundamental to who we are here at KETTLER. And we need to, reflect on those and look at those every day. Just remember who we are together as a whole, that those values matter. And they are the backbone of what makes us special. And as we've become more geographically dispersed team and have flexible work environments, we need to make sure we're making time to be together, to be team members, to collaborate, to innovate, and develop. And that doesn't mean just managers developing their teams. It means peers developing with each other. So we've come out of a really hard time. We all got through a pandemic together. That's amazing. We have now recalibrated to maybe what is the new normal. But it is time for us to come back together. It's time for us to make those meaningful, to be in the office together, to be in these meetings together, to spend time together, because that is only what's going to make us better and stronger. We want to have an environment, as Leslie was describing, that everyone wants to come in so that we really can practice that equity, that inclusion, and that diversity that really makes us wonderful in here. And that's just a part of getting to that cohesion and us being greater as a whole. So we want to be more intentional in how we work across departments and deliver on our vision, as Pam even articulated earlier so well. None of this gets done if we don't all work together. As the Gen 2 panel said, we don't do this unless we all work together. We have to do this. Luke called it out, working with the different teams to make these deals happen. We don't do anything in a silo in this company. We do it because we all work together. And as that united whole, we will ultimately all succeed above and beyond our goals. And that's what makes being here at KETTLER special every day. And I am very proud to be a part of that. So thank you, and enjoy your happy hour.